in with us. We really appreciate it, and I hope that your questions will be answered. I'm sure that they will. Um, and hopefully more people will join in. But as of now, thank you. I'm not sure who this is because it just says iPhone, but I do thank you for being here. I will turn it over to Ms. Carmichael.
Thank you so much. I am actually a financial aid consultant with Leela, and the purpose of my job is to make sure that students receive the resources and assistance they need to make it through the student financial aid process, but specifically to get their FAFSAs completed. So, as I'm sure Mrs. Woodard has already told you, the Louisiana Department of Education has requested that the class of 2021 submit the free application for federal student aid as a requirement for graduation. Now, the purpose of this is to ensure that your money is available and it's ready and waiting for you on your college campus once you get there this fall. And because college can be expensive, it is time to start thinking about those expenses and preparing to pay for them. And those expenses do include your equipment, books, and supplies, such as textbooks, notebooks, a computer if you have one, a computer if you need one, and then your personal expenses like your phone bill, money to do your laundry if you're living away from home, fuel for your car to travel back and forth to campus, and then any food purchases that you might make outside of your meal plan. Room and board, which will include your dorm if you're living on campus, or perhaps you're living in an apartment off campus, and then you might be responsible for electricity, water, gas, and groceries, and then your tuition and fees. Now, the fees will include parking, library, technology, and athletics. All these are tacked onto that uh, lump sum tuition that you see when you check your college's websites. So make sure that you are being prepared for all of these expenses. And the good news is that financial aid is available to help you pay for them from the federal government, from the state of Louisiana in the form of the TOPS scholarship, your college or career schools, and then nonprofit and private organizations. Now, every year, the federal government provides more than $120 billion dollars in student financial aid. And we just want to make sure that you all have your portion of that money, which includes the federal Pell Grant, the federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, the Teacher Educational Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, federal work study, and direct subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus loans. Now, federal student aid grants are a form of financial aid that does not have to be repaid, so you should never turn down a grant offer. The grant family includes Pell, which is for undergraduates with financial need, FSEOGs for undergraduates with extreme financial need, service grants for students of military parents who died defending the country following 9/11, and teach grants for students pursuing a teaching career. The Federal Work Study Program provides part time jobs to help you pay for your education expenses. So when you say yes on the FAFSA, that you're interested in federal work study, the Financial Aid Office will consider you for the program. Any money you earned while working on campus will be paid directly to you, the student, and you can use this money to help pay for your college expenses. Now, federal work study jobs look great on your first professional resume. So if you're going to a four-year college, You could work in a federal work study job and have 4 years of work experience under your belt, and your employer will see that as a big plus. So let's talk just a minute about student loans. And nobody wants to have to accept student loans, but if you do need them to complete your college career, then they are a good investment. But there are several types, and let's talk about what those are so you know how to make a good decision about them. The direct subsidized loans are based on financial need, and no interest is charged on these loans while the student is still in school. On the other hand, direct unsubsidized loans are available are available to every student regardless of their financial need. However, interest does begin to accrue on this type of loan once the loan is fully dispersed and then throughout the life of it. So you can see that there is a big difference between the direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan, and you always want to accept the subsidized portion that you're offered before the unsub, because the U in unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on that loan. Now, if you are offered loans and you do need them to complete your academic year, always accept the federal student loan portion first, because payments aren't due until you graduate or cease to attend. The interest rate is fixed at a lower rate and no credit check is required. On the other hand, private loans should be accepted only as needed because most require payments be made while you're still in school. The interest rate might be variable and it's often much higher, and they almost always require a cosigner, which means that you'll be going to your parent or another adult and asking them to become part of that loan, and they will be responsible for repaying it if you cannot. So, to dispel the myth, almost everyone is eligible for some type of federal student aid. And all federal student aid and most institutional and private aid is contingent upon completion of the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Now, it launched on October 1st and it does so every year. And you do need to submit a FAFSA every year that you're in college. Student financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis, so get your FAFSA submitted as soon as possible. We've already been told that more than 1 million FAFSAs have already been submitted for next academic year. So get to the head of the line while the money is still available so that you'll be offered the maximum award that you're eligible for. And remember to pay close attention to the FAFSA deadlines. Um, there will be college priority financial aid deadlines that you'll want to meet. There are state deadlines. This TOPS scholarship has a FAFSA deadline. And yes, the FAFSA can serve as your TOPS application. And then federal student aid has a deadline as well. Before you begin the FAFSA process, collect all of the documents that you need to complete the form, and by doing so, you should be able to complete this process in 20 to 40 minutes. We've seen some parents and students zip through it and be finished in 20 minutes, but make sure that you have all your paperwork before you get started. And that will include the student and parents' Social Security cards, the student and parents' 2019 federal tax returns, your W-2s, because there's information on this form that might not be found on the federal tax return, and then bank statements and records of investments, because you must report the balances of these accounts as of the date you submit the FAFSA. Begin the process by creating the Federal Student Aid ID. because this allows the student and parents to identify themselves electronically when accessing federal student aid websites like the FAFSA. Now, the FSA ID will consist of a username and a password that each of you will create. So the student and one of his parents will create this ID. And here's the web address. It's fsaid.ed.gov. Use only your personal email address to create this account. So students, if you are using your high school email address to create your federal student aid ID, um, you're going to have a problem once you graduate and that account is disabled because federal student aid will have no way to get in touch with you. So make sure if you don't already have a personal email address that you are creating one. And don't share information with someone else. Don't use mom or dad's mobile phone as your alternate number within the ID. Don't share an email address with someone else because if you do, this is going to cause trouble using the ID. Your FSA ID is your official electronic signature, so you want to make sure that you're recording it and keeping it in a very safe place. You're going to need this every year that you submit your FAFSA, and you don't want somebody else using your ID to claim your federal student aid. This ID is legally binding, so you want to be very careful with it. Now, if you don't have access to a computer when you're ready to get started on the form, you can always download the FAFSA mobile app. It's called My Student Aid, and you can use it to submit your FAFSA on your mobile phone or on any other mobile device with internet access. Or if you prefer, you can use the web-based version at fafsa.gov. Now, what if the student wants to use the mobile app, but mom or dad prefer to use the web-based version? That's fine, because when it comes to signing and submitting the form, all of your information will be compiled into one FAFSA. Begin the process by logging into the FAFSA with the student's FSA ID username and password, because the FAFSA is the student's application for federal student aid. The parent FSA ID is going to be used later on in the form if you choose to transfer your tax information from the IRS into the FAFSA, and then it will be requested again when it's time to sign the student's FAFSA. The high school class of 2021 should complete the 2021-2022 FAFSA because that's the academic year that you're applying for financial aid. Now, if you're graduating earlier and you're starting college this academic year, you will need to complete both FAFSAs. But for your graduation requirement, all seniors must complete the 2021-2022 FAFSA. Now, once you are in the form, you'll see that there are 8 sections that must be completed before submitting. Those include the student demographics, where you'll be asked to report your social security number, name, date of birth, email address, home address, residency status, and gender. School selection, where you'll list your high school, the colleges that you want your FAFSA data to be sent to, and your housing plans on those campuses. Next is the dependency status section, where the student will be asked to consider a list of 10 questions that will determine his dependency status. And I'm going to go over those 10 questions in just a minute. The student will be asked to list the number of dependents living in his household and his parents' education level. Now, a lot of parents want to know why their education level is being asked for. But this is because there could be additional financial aid available for first generation college students. So make sure you're answering that question accurately. Next, you'll move on into the parent and student's financials, where the parent and the student will be asked to report their working wages from 2019, any federal benefits they received, and savings and investment account balances. Then it's time to sign and submit the FAFSA. And you'll sign and submit with your username and password. Once you do so, you will receive a confirmation page letting you know that your FAFSA was successfully submitted. Now, as you move through the form,
I can hear.
if you have questions about if you have questions about one of the questions, what to enter in the field, then you can always look over to the right-hand side and click on that question mark. There are hyperlinks within the FAFSA that you can click on if you want a description or definition detailed. You can request an online FAFSA chat. You can call Federal Student Aid directly, or you can call me at Leela's FAFSA helpline. But for this session, I'm going to cover only the most commonly asked FAFSA questions. Now, if I don't cover something that you are interested in knowing about, then go ahead and drop your questions down in the Zoom chat box below, and I'll be happy to answer those at the end of the presentation. If you prefer to speak to me individually, I'm also going to leave my email address with you. The citizenship requirement. The student must be a citizen or eligible non-citizen to complete a FAFSA. If you think you could be considered an eligible non-citizen, this is one of those hyperlinks. You can always click on there for a definition of eligible non-citizen. If you do fall in those categories and you want to complete a FAFSA, but your parents do not fit into one of those categories, that's fine. You will just enter zeros anywhere a parent's social security number is asked for. Young men between the ages of 18 and 26 must be registered with Selective Service to be eligible for federal student aid. So guys, if you haven't already done so and you would like to register, you can do so within the FAFSA. It makes it a lot simpler than going to the Selective Service website. And only the colleges that you list on your FAFSA in the school selection section are going to consider you for student financial aid. So even if you haven't completed your admissions applications at those schools, you'll want to go ahead and add them to your FAFSA. They'll hold on to your FAFSA results until you finish your admissions applications, and then they will provide you with a financial aid offer. Now you can add up to 10 colleges each time you submit your FAFSA. If you need help with this and you plan to apply to more than 10 colleges, there are instructions in the school selection section, or you can contact me or Federal Student Aid and we'll be happy to help you with that. Now let's talk just for a minute about the dependency status section. The student is going to be asked these 10 questions, and I'm going to go over them one at a time. Will you be 24 or older by January 1st of the school year for which you're applying for financial aid? Are you married or separated but not divorced? Do you have children who receive more than half of their support from you? Do you have dependents other than children or a spouse who live with you and receive more than half of their support from you? Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? At any time since you turned 13, Were both of your parents Were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Or were you a ward or a dependent of the court? Are you an emancipated minor? Or are you in legal guardianship as determined by a court? Now, these are all hyperlinks so that you can get the definition of these terms. But it's important to note that legal custody is not always considered legal guardianship. So make sure you have your documents with you when you're answering these questions. And the last question you'll be asked to consider is, are you an unaccompanied youth who is homeless, or are you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Now, if you can answer yes to just one of these questions and provide a legal document supporting your claim, then you're considered an independent student for FAFSA purposes, and you will not be required to provide parental information. However, even if you live on your own and you file your own taxes, say your parents don't even claim you on their taxes, you still have to provide parental information unless you can answer one of the 10 prior questions. And the number one question we're asked is, which parent or parents do I report on the FAFSA? Now, the rule of thumb is that the parent or parents that you lived with the longest in the past 12 months should be reported on your FAFSA. So if you live with both of your biological parents, then list both of them. That's easy. But if the parent you lived with the longest in the past 12 months is either separated, divorced, or was never married, then you should list only that legal parent on your FAFSA, unless that parent is now remarried, and then you must report that step parent as well. In other words, federal student aid wants to know the financial standing of the household that the student has lived in the longest in the 12 months prior to the date that the FAFSA was submitted. Now, if you're identified as a dependent student, but your parents refuse to provide their information on the FAFSA, you can submit a FAFSA stating that you're unable to provide parental information, but you're not going to be considered for the grant monies or the free money. So if you can't get your parents' cooperation, go ahead and submit your FAFSA, but contact the school's financial aid office because they will work with you individually to remedy this problem. You want to be offered and be considered for the free money, so it's important that you work with them individually. Now, to make the processing of your student financial aid go a lot quicker and be a lot more accurate, it's important to use the Internal Revenue Service's data retrieval tool. And by doing this, you'll be taken directly into the IRS website where you will grab your 2019 income tax return and enter these information in these fields exactly as printed on that return. Now, we've worked with students and parents whose tax preparer misspelled their name, or they've moved since they filed in 2019. That's fine, but type in the information exactly as it's printed on your tax return, or you're not going to be able to be successful with the link. The IRS wants to make sure that the person who's in their website is the person who filed that return. So that's why it's important to have this return with you before you get started. For students who choose not to use this tool, you will be asked by the financial aid office at each of your colleges to request a tax transcript from the IRS and have it sent directly to your colleges. So this is sort of a one-stop shop right here. You can link to the IRS, and every college that receives your FAFSA will receive this data, and you won't have to request and send all of those tax transcripts out. And then it's almost time to sign and submit your FAFSA. But before you do, please review your student aid report. This reflects every question that you're asked and your answer to each one. You can take time to look through this. You might see an error. You might see something that you want to change before you submit the FAFSA so that the financial aid office will receive the most accurate information so that they can quickly process your aid. Now, as I mentioned, the student and one of his parents will use their FSA IDs to sign the FAFSA and then submit it. And once you do, you'll receive this pop-up confirmation page. Now, the student is going to receive an email from Federal Student Aid a little bit later on telling them that their FAFSA was successfully submitted. But this is the only time that this much information is going to be provided. So please either print this page or take a screenshot of the page because you're going to find your confirmation number and the date and time you submitted, instructions on what to do next to make it through the student financial aid process. You'll see a list of colleges that you want your FAFSA data to go to, and then you'll be able to view your student financial aid estimates. And I'm going to stress the word estimate because everybody gets excited when they see the dollar amounts. But these are just recommendations from Federal Student Aid to your colleges. And the colleges themselves are going to make your offers. Now, if you start your FAFSA, but you don't complete it and you save it for later, you will receive weekly communications from Federal Student Aid that further action is required. So parents, if you're on with us, encourage your students to check their email timely for information from Federal Student Aid. Because if something's missing, your college cannot process your financial aid offer. Now, what if you did submit your FAFSA, but you want to go in and maybe add another school? You want to change your contact information, or maybe your college has asked that you make a change to your FAFSA. There are several ways to do so, but the quickest and most efficient way is to go back to FAFSA.gov, log in as the student, make your corrections, but remember, each time you do that, you must sign and resubmit your FAFSA. Once it's fully processed, which takes about 3 to 5 days, then it will be shared with your colleges. And each financial aid office will begin to identify any aid that you might be eligible to receive. And if your family's financial situation has changed since 2019, contact your college financial aid office because they have the ability to offer you additional, perhaps free money to help you finish out your academic year. They can use their own professional judgment to make changes to what federal student aid recommends. Now, say there have been job layoffs in your family. I know in your area you've been through a lot of hardships this year. Um, Maybe there are some increased medical expenses that have been incurred. The financial aid office wants to help you. They want to make sure that you are receiving the most assistance that they can give you. So don't be shy about contacting them once you submit your FAFSA. They'll be happy to work with you independently because they're trying to determine your net price. And that's what you'll be responsible for paying out of pocket. They're going to take the cost of attendance at their college and subtract any grants or scholarships that they can offer you. And then they'll let you know the amount that you're responsible to pay, if any. And you will need to pay this in cash or by accepting student loans to help pay that balance. Every college is going to make an offer to you, and each one will show their cost of attendance and line item any grants, scholarships, work study, student loans that they can offer you. Read over these offers carefully and respond to any requests that they might make of you so that they can quickly process your aid. Now, they're not all going to look alike. Some awards are going to come in the mail. Some colleges might send the financial aid offer to the student's email address. Others will ask you to create a student account and they'll communicate with you over their student portal. So be sure that you are following through with them so that they can process your aid. And once you've decided where you're going to college, you're going to want to accept your financial aid in this order. Grants and scholarships first, because this is gift aid that doesn't have to be repaid. Federal work study is earned money. You don't have to pay that back. But student loans must be repaid because this is money you've borrowed and you will have to repay it with interest. Now, I know this has a lot of information to absorb in one brief presentation. So Leela has published a FAFSA completion guide for the class of 2021, and it's free for all Louisiana high school seniors. If you haven't already received your copy, and this is an electronic copy this year, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send a copy of the guide to you, along with our senior checklist, which shows you month by month what you need to get accomplished to be ready for college in the fall. And I want to take just 1 minute to finish up by talking to you about scholarships. Scholarships are gift aid, and these do not have to be repaid. You can find them, um, you can find that they're going to be offered by your colleges, perhaps by your parents' employers, community and religious organizations will offer them. Some are based on your academic achievement or a special talent that you might have. Others are based on financial need. A scholarship could cover the entire cost of your tuition or just be a one time award. But either way, applying for and winning scholarships is going to reduce the cost of your education. And bottom line, that means it's going to reduce your student loan debt. So talk to your counselor, talk to your college financial aid offices and your admissions recruiters about scholarships that they've heard about. Leela is offering a $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship this year. It's for Louisiana high school seniors who've completed the FAFSA. So you should all be eligible to apply for this one. And then once you are in college, if you go to a Louisiana college, we offer a $1,000 Choose Louisiana scholarship because we want to keep you in Louisiana. And for students who are going to pricier colleges and you've exhausted all of your opportunity for grants, scholarships, state and federal money, Leela does administer an education loan program. It's a nonprofit loan, and the details can be found at leelachoice.org. So now we've come to the question and answer period. I want you to feel free to use the Zoom chat box or take yourself off of mute and ask your questions. In the meantime, I'm going to put up my contact information. You'll see Leela's FAFSA helpline listed here. Dial in and you'll talk directly to me or send me an email, and I'll be happy to respond in that fashion. While we're waiting for questions, I do want you to know that a copy of this presentation is going to be posted on our YouTube channel, and it's called Ask Leela. And I'll also send it over to Miss Woodard so that she can use it to share with those who couldn't attend this evening. I'm going to go down here and check out our chat box. Remember, if at any time while you're in the FAFSA you have questions, you have several resources that you can take advantage of. So don't be shy about that. Always feel free to contact one of us to help you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carmichael. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day and schedule to do this for us. It is greatly appreciated.
You're very welcome. And if we don't have any questions, then I'm going to go ahead and close out the session and wish everybody a great holiday season. And I hope you guys have a wonderful senior year. We all get back to normal next semester. Good evening.